Welcome to week 5, day 20 of the summer 2025 database driven web development course. I'm Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. So this week, real quick, as far as assignments go, got a hands-on test, Hot 2. And that one, might as well just bring it up. There's not, I don't see really a lot for me to go over with you. I, kind of went through all of these, and it's pretty much if you were able to complete the other assignments for database related stuff, you shouldn't have a problem with this one. But this one's using a different. Let's see. Be working with the Airbnb database, right? The Airbnb database instead of Mflix. So just here's one Mr. Gudmans did. Just here's a video, and I know we've kind of went over adding a separate, adding a sample database. So you need to do that for the Airbnb one. But here's all the command. Here's the 20 queries, pretty much basic of what we've already done. I don't see anything that's new in here. That if you've been able to successfully do the other assignments, you should be fine with these. So I'm not really. Let me know if you have any questions. I don't really see anything really significant I need to go over on this for you guys for this assignment. Yeah, and here a little bit. Well, I'm going to kind of go over some of the Lab 301. I'm just going to kind of go through this kind of project I'm working on myself a little bit, kind of using that as an example. But from the user, kind of the user perspective, the user object, it's going to be pretty close to the same thing, at least at the beginning on that. So I'll go through that. And then also we've got another written test, and actually this is the last written test of the course. We're only doing 5 of the written test. I'll have to check. I'm almost sure we don't have any other written tests, but usually these written tests were really just some of the JavaScript basic stuff. That was kind of the purpose of these. So that will be due also. So all of these will be due on 6/15. To move on to the instructor application. So this is an application that I was wanting to build, and I've started to build. That just it's basically a kind of a quiz generator thing. I kind of want to create this quiz generator, so you as students can log in and create a profile, log in, and then be able to take tests and be able to track those tests. And this is not going to be something that's going to be required for you or anything. It's just an kind of an optional thing that's available to you if you want to use it, right? Now, just going to kind of be, just different areas for you to help build your skills in that, kind of preparing for interviews and so forth, right? And this quiz generator, probably been best if I have a pictorial showing kind of the different pieces. So from my perspective, I kind of have 2 different things. One, I have something that's just going to generate the quizzes, and I'm going to be using generative AI, using Google Gemini, large language model to generate the questions. And then I'm planning on taking those questions and answers and putting them in a Mongo database. Okay. And so that will be kind of one separate app. This will kind of, basically an API app just for generating and storing the questions and answers to the different quizzes, okay? And then the other app is basically going to be the user interface that will also include kind of the same thing as what you guys are doing an issue tracker. It will have an API side for different things. Be able to add users, register yourself, add yourself, all from the UI. And then also be able to take the quizzes, right? So that will be kind of separated out. But so real quick here, I just kind of want to show you, this is kind of what I'm kind of working on myself. And here, I'm importing Google Generative AI. And then in my environment, I have an API key to access it. And obviously, you can do the same thing. Now, maybe there's some opportunity later on in this course for you to integrate something similar to this if you want within yours. Right now, for the stuff we're doing, not so much. Okay, this is kind of specific to what I'm kind of working on, so that's why I'm kind of doing it. But I basically have a endpoint for generating a quiz. Okay, and this is obviously going to be kind of, what I consider a minimal viable project. MVPs called them like a minimal viable product here, and it's basically just get something up and running, and then you kind of move from there, right? You kind of get some minimal product, see how it looks, and then kind of keep on iterating, adding functionality, taking care of things like that, right? But I have a prompt, so this prompt will actually call the Gemini large language model. The large language model passing this prompt, okay? And one thing here was these large language models, when they return, especially like JSON type stuff, I'm wanting a JSON array of objects returned to make it simpler. So when they return stuff like that, sometimes they put some weird some characters at the beginning. So I'm kind of asking to, do not include these markdowns. And then also I try to go ahead and clean them up if they are there. Okay. So there's that. So I'll just kind of show you what this thing's going to do here real quick. Let me start this thing up. Let me see how I did this. I guess I just did a... All right, let me see. I haven't run this in a little bit. I kind of started this a little bit ago. I don't think I even need to... let me do npm run. I'll just do dev. That's fine. Oh, so what's missing here? Okay, I was playing around with something. Request model database. Yeah, I was starting to add some functionality that I didn't finish, I think, here. Let's see here, real quick. Questions. I should be able to fix this pretty quickly here, I think. Oh, okay, yeah, let me see what I got going on here. Let me comment this out. It might just be that at this point. I don't think I added anything else. I have to kill this and try again here. Okay. Maybe this is going to take a little more than I thought. Questions line 2. Yeah, that don't need to be here either. Okay, this looks good to me. I'll tell you what, I don't want to. I apologize. I thought this was in better shape than this. I need to spend some time going through this, and I want to do that while you guys are here. But I'll get this fixed up and just show you tomorrow on that part of it. Okay, so let's look at this assignment, the lab, real quick here. Now, one thing I did want to point out is in this first one that you did when you originally did your user and your user.js and your bugs.js, a lot of these routes, they all kind of started with the lowercase. They didn't have an S at the end here. Really, for best practices, it's best to have, for those RESTful services or RESTful APIs, to have an S on there. Okay. So a few of these in the lab, this is the old one. This is the lab 01-02. Okay. This was the original one that you did. Okay. The one for 3.1 though is you're going to have to make a few changes to the labs, and you'll see that it'll have users with an S instead of just that. And then I guess as far as that list one is actually kind of gone. It doesn't have list here. So kind of want to change it over to here. I'm not quite sure when that was created, why there wasn't a little consistency there, but so apologize for that. But we'll go ahead and use it like this. So you might have to make some changes and also make some changes in Postman as we go. Okay. So the biggest part of this lab is the fact that we're going to be integrating this with MongoDB. Okay, that's the most important part of this. And another thing we're also going to be doing is we're going to do this bcrypt, and this is going to be using to hash your passwords, so that the password that you see will be different. The hash word you see in the database is not going to be the one that you're entering on the screen. Okay, it's going to be saved in an encrypted state. All right. So that'll be hashed. So besides that, there's some other things as far as handling some errors. I'm doing some try catches and things like that in here. Also, we'll be doing like async await to make sure that we're using so it's asynchronously getting the data from the database and things like that. So I am going to, instead of me actually doing the specific lab, I'm going to be using the other part of my instructor app that I'm working on. So let me bring that up. So here is my quiz app, okay? And basically I'm doing almost the same thing. I have a user object here, right? I have a user JS. And so I'm going to kind of be going through that here. Okay. So, but the first thing here, to get back to the lab. If we go here at the beginning, it talks about add the database module. So I'm hoping that the guys that are live online for me can add this. So what we're going to do is go ahead and you just grab this as an image. You can actually cut and paste this. Just remember, when you get down here at the bottom, you also need to grab this from the second page as well. Okay. And basically you can just go ahead and grab all of that. And then in your root directory, of your app, which is basically the final project, right? Go ahead and create a database.js file and also create a .env file. So after you get your database.js file created, then you want to come in here and do a .env file, also at the root. So where I have quiz, yours is going to be final project up here. You're going to be final project up here. And then you want to go ahead and have your port. A lot of students on some of the things we did before did not have this defined, so that's why they weren't seeing debug statements being in their file in your terminal when you run it. So make sure that you have this also. Here's your URL, and so this is mine, but you're going to go ahead and replace this what you have, and make sure you have your password, right? And this is the same that you can get from Atlas on that. Here for DB name, I have Quiz. Yours is going to be whatever you called your database name in Mongo, like issue tracker or whatever you called it. Okay, that's going to be your DB name. So for me, let's see. For me, it's Quiz here. Maybe depending on what you called yours, you probably might have called it issue tracker. You're going to use issue tracker instead. Okay. Okay, so now you should be able, once you have your database file and your .env file, you should be able to open up a new terminal. Make sure you're in the root. So yours should be Final Project, mine's Quiz. Yours should be Final Project though. And then in here, what you can do is just run node. And, what you're going to have to do here, the next thing you're going to have to do is make sure you should already have debug installed in your node modules. Here, what you're going to have to do here for this is you're going to have to do npm install, which, you can do npm install or just I and do Mongo DB. And that should install MongoDB because you need that. You should already have debug. You should be good with everything else. I think you should, yeah. So go ahead and do that. And then you should be able to go ahead and do node. And just database like that. Hit enter. Okay, to start this, originally I said node, like here. What you're going to have to do, so this is just a quick test. That's all I'm trying to do here is do a quick test to make sure that you're actually accessing, getting access to the database. So for these log statements to show, okay, even though originally when I ran this, it actually connected, just didn't show you anything. But what you need to go ahead and do is use this command just like this, node-r.env.config, then database.js. And if you run that, okay, you should see something like this. Well, I put in hello. That says hello. That's just because I put in hello up there when I was testing this. I did this just to see if it was having a problem even doing anything earlier. Gives me an off failed. So if you have a problem, you can always come out to Compass and go to your connection string. So here I've got this, mine's called the summer one here. I can go ahead and do a edit connection. And then I can, you click on edit your connection and then you grab this. When you click in here, it's going to show the password and everything. So grab this because this is the one you need in your .env file. Okay. I'm just going to connect because I'm going to be using that later. All right. Okay, and so you can go ahead and kill the server from there. That was the whole purpose was that, just to make sure that you can make that connection. Okay. So what we're going to be changing in here. So basically, the code that you just copied in here has this ping here, and then here's some things that I started adding myself, and so we'll go through some of these on what you'll be adding here. Okay. So these are going to be your different calls you're going to be making to the database. and you'll be accessing, you'll making calls to these functions, okay, from these modules from within your routes, okay. And here we're doing an export. I'm doing an export. We'll walk through that as we go. Exporting the different functions, okay, that we're going to be using. Okay. So next here, let's go to our user object. So I did want to, like I mentioned earlier, some of you did not have your .env file set up right to for debugging to work. So hopefully if you put that debug app in there, that kind of the first couple lines there, then you should be able to see debugging statements where you do these different debugging statements. Okay. As long as you prefix this correctly, you need to prefix it like that. Okay, app, and then here it doesn't matter what you put, but all right. So first here, let's go look at like our first one. So if you want, why don't we put this back? Because like I said here on the labs, we had lab 102. It had list here, but on this one, on the 03.01, and this is what we'll stick with going forward. Okay, it has just API users. Okay. So let's go ahead and change that to just being our / here. Okay. Change that to our / there. And obviously in our index, we have, this is how we're using the user router. Here's our base, right? .users, plural. So as far as that goes, because, we did different things. In our ERD, we had users defined as kind of singular. Let's just take a quick look at that. So in our ERD, call it user because it's basically each one of these that's a bug. Each one's a separate entity. An entity is kind of a singular type thing, right? It's not a list or a collection of things. So user was kind of always, singular, right? So for ERD. And then for within our collections, we have that plural, users, bugs, etc. And I would suggest that for those, you go ahead and make users lowercase, kind of the same way that they've done for the different things for the sample database, comments, movies, sessions, theaters, all lowercase. I would go ahead and try to stick with your collections as being lowercase. Okay. Another thing I did want to mention is when you're calling from Postman, okay. Let me bring up Postman real quick here. When you're calling from within Postman, not this one, if you are, and I suggest you do it this way. Let's see, we're not going to be doing that one. Where we're actually like registering. So here we're registering. So if you don't include this line 10 up here, this line 10 in the code, if you don't include this is not going to work for you, okay? What you would have to do instead is use raw and then use JSON and actually put all of those in here as an object, as a JSON object, okay? Open, close curly braces and put all those in there the name, colon, value, right? Or, which I suggest, just go ahead and do it like this. Make sure you have this selected, this form URL encoded, and you have all your names here, right? But like I said, if you do that, you need to make sure that you have this line 10 in here. Extend it. This can be false or true. It's not that big of a deal, but might as well just make it true. Just to be on the safe side. So also want to mention that because not every student on the previous assignments had that. So the few different things there was, one, making sure you have for your debugging statements to show, make sure you've got your debug set up in your env file. Make sure you got that. And then also make sure that you go ahead and have this URL encoded line so that you can go ahead and use the body and use these name value, okay, these key value type pairs. Okay, so for what you've already have, you should already have pretty much all of this there already from the previous assignment, from that Lab 2-1. You should have this. Make sure you add this, like I said. You got your front end. You've already done that. I think everybody did pretty good on all of that. So you should be good there. And that's about all you really need to worry about right now in here. Okay, that's the index. In your database, we've got you've got what you should need from that. One thing to change here. I know in this directions, let's bring this back up here. I know in these directions, let me see, sorry. It has it like this. Well, I'm not sure what you're going to receive. If I try to do this, I'll actually show you what it does. It's because it's kind of deprecated, meaning it'll actually work, but it's best that, as you can see in here, this was marked as deprecated. Don't say it will work, but once something's deprecated, especially in an API and stuff like that, when something's deprecated, it may work for a while, but it's basically like a warning. Okay, we're deprecating this. It'll probably work for some number of versions, but sooner or later there'll be a version where they'll end up kind of taking it out and it won't work at all anymore. It's kind of more of like a warning type thing to you, just to let you know. So the correct way to create an object ID from a string for Mongo is the second way. So what I would do is go ahead and replace this with this. Okay, so you're going to be doing object ID dot create from hex string and passing in the string. Okay. So I wanted to point that one out. I can actually just change that in there too. Why don't I even do that too? Since we know that that is the case. All right, that's all right. All right. Now we can get more serious about this user object here. So we got API.users. And in here, So like I did, I went ahead and changed this to just a forward slash. So this should be the user list. And here's just a debug statement. It's a good idea to use some debug statements in here, right? Debug user. Depends on what you called yours. You could have called it differently, but here's debug user. And then go ahead so that you know when you come in here, so you can see when you run things, you access them from Postman, you'll be able to see some statements. Very helpful for debugging purposes. Okay. And then what I'm doing here, I created a get all users in my database thing to get all the users from the MongoDB. Okay. You can call it something different if you want. Okay. But if we go to the database, so what I did up here, you can see get all users, and you can import it like this. Import get all users from, and then the path to your database JS file. And the reason we have to go up some directories is because the user object is in your routes API. So you need to go up 2 directories. That's why we're doing the // You need to go up 2 directories to database.js or an API. You got to go up to routes. Then you got to go up to the root directory, and then your database.js is in your root directory. Okay, well, it's kind of down here, but it is in your root directory, the database.js. Okay, and then in your database.js file, I have this get all users. Okay, get all users. And so what we're doing here is you're going to, this is going to be very similar to kind of what you do, and very similar to what we do, just doing our own command line stuff, right? You're just going to do db.collection.users. One thing I guess is a little bit different is when we do the queries right there, like in right there in the shell, and that we use db.users. We replace collection with users, right? But for this, we go ahead and do db.collection, and then you're going to put your collection name here. So make sure that this is your correct collection. If yours has, and I suggest using undercase things, so yours should pretty much be the same as this. And then you're doing a find, and you need to make sure you have an open and close curly braces. And here we're doing to array, so we're going to bring all of the ones back as an array. Okay. So go ahead and get this coded. Make sure you bring in this as your database.js file. And then also go ahead and do get all users. And I'll explain this. So this is invoked, initiating the asynchronous operation to fetch the user data. Okay. And so what this does is it immediately returns a promise object, which is in the current state. Okay, so this is going to return a promise object, which is currently in the pending state. Okay, and then what we do here is we're going to do the then and catch. Okay, the then and catch methods are immediately attached to the promise returned by get all users. Okay, and they set up listeners for when the promise eventually resolves, okay, or rejects. Okay, it's going to either resolve. If it resolves, you do this. If it rejects, you do this. Okay. All right. So, want to make sure that go ahead here to package JSON file. And So here we're going to go ahead and start your server once you get that. And then obviously once you start your server, you can be making changes as you go, right? But I just want to go ahead and do an npm run. I sometimes forget to run. I start dev. Start dev. Okay, up and running. It's connecting and everything. So, you wanted to make sure you killed it from before when we just did that node database JS. That was just to test that, do a quick test. But once you have this integrated, it should work just from doing your, basically your start dev. Okay. And then if I bring up Postman, let me bring up user list here. And I don't think I need to change that. I think I need, no. So you might, like I said, depending on what your API calls were, you might have to change those. So mine's just going to be API users, which was the route. And if I hit send, and so there are my ones that I have. For you, your role is going to be different. You had the developer role, system analyst, whatever. For my little quiz application, I have a student role, I have an instructor, and I have an admin. Okay. So mine will be a little different. I already had, these 4 created already. Okay. So these are now coming from the database, whereas before we were getting it from that user array. So you want to get rid of that user array, and we're just going to be getting it from the database. So the important thing is make sure that you, like I have some other ones here, obviously, but make sure that the ones that you have defined here, if you can't export something unless it's already defined here. And like I've already defined some extra ones, right? Delete user. So for you would probably only be bringing back the new ID, connect, ping, only the ones that you have here at that point. So like if you're just creating get all users, you're not going to have these other ones, right? So you only can export what you've already have defined in here. And then also in this file, you only can bring in, they have to be in that export for you to bring them in here as well, or you're just going to get an error, right? So in your case, if you're working on the first one, you're most likely only going to have this first one here. Okay. But I know if I save this, I expected it to fail, but that's okay. I'm kind of glad it didn't. I know if I call something, it'll fail though. Okay. So that was get all users, which was basically the / here. This is going to be list of all users. Let's see what the requirement looks like though on that. So I'm not going to do every single thing. You're going to kind of have to look through this as well for yourself. Let me look at the lab here. So for get all users, JSON array. Yeah, it's not asking for a lot here. A lot of additional, because it's basically just the list of users and that's it. You're using a find method, which is going to bring all back. Okay. Next one is for the user ID one. And here just going to do a find one, and I'll just kind of go through this, I guess, kind of fast. And then I'll go through the register where we're going to do something a little more because we're going to have to check to see if already exists. Okay, so for the user ID one, let's work on that one here. So here's the user ID, and it's basically going to create a function called getUserById. It's getting from the params user ID, right? From the parm is being passed in. It's setting this on the ID. Then we're calling get user by ID, passing in the ID. And so for this is going to be defined in your database.js file, get user by ID. And so here's get user by ID. Not that you necessarily have to do, it's a good idea to change the length of this, make sure it's the correct length. If you didn't enter it correctly. So all user IDs will be 24 in length. Okay. And then here, basically what you're doing is DB collection users, doing a find one. Okay. And here we're using this create from hex string, and we're passing in the ID. Okay. And then we're just returning the user. And I guess we can do that as well. So we got this in our database, get user by ID, an async function. Make sure the collection's name's right, plural, if that's what you have. Hopefully that's what we have. We're doing a find one on that. Within our user object, let me and make sure that you have get user by ID returning. You're returning this one. In your user object at the top here, you're going to have it like this. Get user by ID. This is coming from the database file. Let me save that. Okay. And then let me bring up Postman here. So this is by ID. Here, I'm going to go grab an ID. I guess the best way, just click on users here and grab one of these IDs. And then in Postman, I'm going to get user by ID. Let's see the list. We changed that to an S. User ID, API users. Need to change that to an S. Pass in the user ID. Hit send. And wrong port. I've done different things here with different ports before, testing students before, so change that to 3000. That should make a difference. And so there is your one ID returned. John Doe. He's one of the students. Okay. Okay, so that's that one there. The next one in our list. So one here, we're returning 200, status code 404 if the user's not found, right? And also you should be doing, actually, on all of these, you also need to do a try. Catch. What happened up here? So for all of these, you should be doing a try catch from your from each route. So if something goes wrong, database related thing, you're gonna get a error. This will log it to your console. This one's going to send back that to your to Postman, right? And so we can test that by, let's test that real quick. I think that's saved and good. So by just, well, this should be doing, let's see what this returns. That was kind of interesting. I expected that to, oh, well, no. Let's restart this again. Yeah, problem I was having here is it's working now, but I wasn't thinking here. So you can, depends on where your try catch is. And sometimes it's not best to wrap everything. But in this case, I was kind of, I had things defined, and if you got them in the wrong scope, you're going to have problems, right? So actually, let me just go back here again, and let me get rid of the try catch again. And I hate to wrap everything in try catch, but maybe in this case, it's not that much, and it's not a big deal. Because, you got to make sure that if when you've got try catches and stuff, you're creating scopes and stuff. If you have things defined, variables, you can have problems if you're trying to access it outside the scope. So here I'm just going to go ahead and do a try on all of this. And I'm not sure why that wants to do that for me all the time like that, but that's okay. And I'm doing a try, and I'm going to catch internal server error. Okay, save. All right, let's do a try. We're doing a catch. Let me format this. Should be good. Try catch, sending the error. Let me try this again. Hit send, and yep, it's working. What I wanted to do is something like send something that's not found. So I want it to be valid. I want it to be 24, because we were checking that, but I just want it to be not found. And that's returning an internal server error. So I need to work on that. Else, user not found, if server, if user. You just want to make sure you have user not found. If it's not found, coming back. Okay. All right. So let's continue on here. So let's look at register. Okay, so register is going to have a little bit more here involved. Obviously, you have a lot more data you're passing in. But also something that's kind of not mentioned exactly in here is whenever you're adding a password, you want to make sure that you encrypt that. So I'll show you that real quick as well. And it's also asking for an object ID and a creation date. So something a little additional, adding a creation date to it. This is going to be a new record, so you're creating a new one here. All right. So first here on my register, I'm basically doing a check to see if there's anything missing between email, password, full name, given name, family name, role, and then just returning that. So first I just check to see if the data is good. You don't really want to make any database calls until you make sure that the data is good, right? Check all your data first. Once you've validated all your data, then you can go ahead and, in this case for a register, you want to make sure that, if somebody already registered once, that they don't register again, right? So you want to kind of do you want to see if they've already registered. So here what I'm doing is I'm doing a search user, okay? I'm doing a search user, and I'm doing get user by email. Okay, so then within my database file, I have get user by email, and I'm just doing a find one. I'm passing in the email address. And obviously it's a lot easier to search for search by an email address than it is by an ID, because an email address, you're going to kind of know that. So doing a find one on an email address and returning that user object. And obviously, if you have get user by email in your database file, you need to make sure that you export that. You'll miss these now and then, obviously, when you're just coding. But, so you make sure that you export this, and then within your user file, you're going to make sure that you go ahead and import it. So you want to import get user by email. Okay. So that was that portion of it. This was for register. So that is to get it. And then after you get it, if it doesn't exist, right? So if search user, then you're going to say return email already is registered. Else you're going to create a new one. Different ways you can do this, but basically what I'm doing is creating a new user here. Okay. And what this is going to do is all of these fields will get populated from here, right? All of these fields that are here are going to get populated right here, are being passed in right there, right? So everything from Postman and eventually the UI, when you create that, all of these will get passed in. Okay, but I'm adding a couple others. I'm adding a new object ID, okay, for the ID. And I'm also passing a create at, or, you can call these what you want, created on, maybe a little more popular, created at, created on this date. So this is when that user record was created. And like in MongoDB, you can always add things and change things. Just realize that once you create some documents like that, only those documents you create are going to do that. If like you created a few with created on, and then you did a few documents without it, that document's going to be different, obviously, in Mongo. So you either have to edit it, and you can get these things saved and blow them away and start over and stuff like that. You'll have to do that. There'll be little things you'll try to do and you say, oh, that's not going to work. That document don't have that. And, just something you have to work through. Okay. But here we're creating a new user with the object ID, date, and all these fields that were passed in from the body. Okay. And then here we're doing an add user. So first we did a search by email. Went to see if we have that. If we do have that, we're returning, hey, this already exists. If not, then we're going to go ahead and create a new user. All right. So let's go look at add user in our database file. So for us to use add user, let's see, we got to add user here. And we're basically doing, kind of didn't mention this, you're always going to have to do a connect to your database, right? So you do a connect to your database, and then here you're doing same things we've done before. Make sure your collection name's right. You're doing an insert one, and you're passing in the user. Okay. In a lot of cases, you want to kind of keep these these functions as clean as possible. You know, as clean as possible, and these are pretty clean. And then we can log it as well. And then obviously in here, just like the other ones, you want to make sure that you have add user to your export functions. And then if within user, at the top here, you want to make sure that you import it. All right, we're going to save that one. Is everything looking okay down here? Okay. So obviously you change stuff, it's going to constantly restart the server and everything. You'll know if you have a problem, right? All right, so we have that. So this is for register. So let's run register from Postman. Let's see what I have here. Make sure I didn't already create this one before. So let's see, these are all the existing ones, so I don't have anything new created. Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to do register. Just going to register a new user. Just call Mr. Permissions. So, basically, I'm doing stuff for my purposes, which is just a little different. Obviously your roles is going to be developer, like I said before, developer, systems analyst, business analyst, or whatever. So you're going to have your own roles. For me, I'm just got kind of 3 roles for now. For my quiz app is basically an admin, an instructor, and a student. That could change. But so here's my my different fields. And then I need to change my call up here to be users, plural, and register. And let's hit send and hope that this is going to work. And it did. It returned a new user registered and returned a user ID. And now if we go look at our database, so we can come in here into Compass. And so if this is always a good tool to have there. Make sure how things are getting created. Obviously, you can print it out as far as debug statements and stuff, but it's also handy to come in here as well. And if you want to make some changes, you can always make some changes within here too as well, right? So you come on up here, and obviously it's not going to automatically update. If you come up here, this line all the way over here on the right-hand side, you got this little refresh. You can click refresh and go down to the bottom. And so here you've got, now you've got that created on date that you created, right? And here you can always change your name, change anything in here. Just click on this. You can change values of things that you need if you need to. One option, different options on doing things, right? Okay, so now you've got a new registered user. And this one, you wanted to make sure that you go ahead and do your try catches. Wrap that in your try catches. Okay. Wrap that in a try catch. Now the next thing I want to do is go ahead and now I want to just go ahead. So the 2 different ones that you're probably going to have to be dealing with for encrypting the password, and that is going to be logging in for the login and for the register. So for the register, that's when we're creating it. So we're going to be doing we're going to encrypt that when we log in. When we register, when we register, we're going to encrypt that. That's when it's creating a new user, and we're going to save that. We don't want to save passwords that have, we don't have save passwords that are not encrypted. So we're going to go ahead and encrypt that. Okay, and here, so with our user object, so what we're going to want to do here on this is we want to import bcrypt from bcrypt like that. Okay. Save that. Okay, and then next thing, obviously, the server's complaining, which it should because we're importing something that doesn't exist. Now, one thing you can kind of do here when you're working and you got the server running, you want to keep it running, you can come in and create another shell, and then in here, as long as you're in the same right directory here, so here you can do basically npm install bcrypt. And now I have that installed. Go back over here. And just while from me doing that and coming back, it already reloaded itself. All right. Now it's happy. It found it. It's happy. Obviously, we were not using it anywhere, but it's there now. So you got to make sure that you install it. And then I'm going to come down here to our register. And what we're going to do is we don't want to encrypt it here. We want to encrypt it before we add it here. So, and we can do this after the fact. We created a new user. We just leave it like that. We pass that in. And we can run this to add that. Okay. And as well, just in general, so bcrypt is a password hashing function. It's designed to, it's actually very slow, but you know, for our purposes, probably going to be pretty quick. But unlike there's simple hashing algorithms like MD5, SHA-1, but bcrypt is specifically built for passwords. Okay. I don't want to get into too much of that, but there's this idea of salt rounds. It's kind of how it it's a key feature. It's called salting. Okay. And in that, it's how it creates that hashing. All right. And so when we've got a 10 in here, this 10 is a cost factor. It's called the cost factor, sometimes called salt rounds. Okay. And it's just part of the, you know, the more you put, the you know, it's going to be slower, but you know, it's a value that determines how intense the hashing process will be. So here, kind of a general one could be, you know, 10's very used, pretty popular. So I'm just using 10 in this case. Okay. And so this is going to go ahead and create a password. We're just taking the new user object that we already have. We're grabbing the password from that, and we're encrypting that password and putting it back on here. I should say we're grabbing this password there and putting it back on here in an encrypted state, and then we're saving this, and it will then be encrypted. Okay, so we're good here. Let me save this if I didn't already. Server's still good. Let me go to Postman here. And I'm going to make a change to this just so this, because I already had this one. I could go delete it, but I'll just create a post Mr. Permissions number 2, where we're using the email to check if it already exists. So in this case, it won't exist because the email will be different, and it will create a new user with the same information. Maybe I'll just do this just to make sure. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hit send here. And new user registered. And there's the new user ID. Did want to point out before we go take a look, this is a way to return a user. The user ID gets created, gets returned. It's best to use the one that gets returned. You do a result. When you set this result equal to your add user, this result's going to have an inserted. It's going to have insert ID, and this will be the one that's inserted, which we actually passed it in there, but at least by it returning it, that that's the one it actually inserted. So this will give you that, and we're logging that there, right? Well, we're bringing it back to Postman. But just to validate that we've went ahead and encrypted that password, let's go over to Mongo again, Compass, and I'm just going to refresh this. Obviously, we could be just doing queries. We could use the shell and whatever, but this is what we're kind of doing here today. So this is the first one we created, and then I created the Mr. Permissions 2. And as you can see, the password is different now. This is the encrypted password, okay? But that password is actually still this. It's just this is the encrypted version of this password. So pretty amazing how you take 6 digits, 6 numbers, and all of a sudden you've got this, big long. This is that encrypted password, and we'll work on this later, because basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to go back and forth. We're going to encrypt it to save it, and then we want to bring it back to this. We want to bring it back to Postman or something. We'll bring it back to Postman and it's unencrypted. We'll worry about that later. Okay, but for now. This is what we're going to be doing. We're just going to encrypt the passwords, okay, like that. And once we log in, this is going to be a factor, much more of a factor as well. Because when you log in, you're going to log in with the 1, 2, 3. Well, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because that was the same one for this one. But we're going to take that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to run a function on that, and it's going to be able to validate that yes, this hash is the hash of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Or whatever password. We'll have different passwords. Okay, that's all I have for today. We'll continue this tomorrow. And one thing I do want to fix, I kind of had a problem with my little quiz application, that part where I went ahead and generated the quiz questions. I'm going to look into that, and I'll have that fixed just so I can show you that. So that's all I have, and have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.